Shares in Uber have tumbled after the ride-hailing giant announced it'll now be giving its 70,000 drivers in the UK the minimum wage, holiday pay and pensions. The move follows a legal judgment last month that ruled Uber drivers should be treated as workers and not as freelance contractors. The move has been broadly welcomed and some hope it'll lead to improved conditions across the so-called gig economy. McGregor-Wood reports.
Uber's U-turn means it will now pay UK drivers the national living wage of $12.50 an hour, provide holiday pay and enrol them in a pension scheme, kind of benefits given to full-time employees. The company's trying to put a positive spin on something that has been forced upon it.
The UK is unique in having three categories. It has employed, it has independent contractors, and then in the middle it has this category called worker that has been very unclear to anyone as to how that was really due to work. And now, with the Supreme Court clarifying that, actually I think we as Uber and also the industry have a good way forward.
A way forward perhaps, but there could be trouble ahead. The company says it will only pay the minimum wage when drivers are actually engaged with customers, not while they're logged on and looking for a fare. That appears to fly in the face of the Supreme Court's ruling.
The court ruling was very clear that as soon as workers switch on that app, they are working and they have to be treated fairly as workers, and that includes entitlement to the national minimum wage.
The move has been welcomed by the UK government and unions, but it took 5 years of bitter legal wrangling for Uber to change its position. Uber chief executive Dara Khosrowshahi said in a statement, "This is a significant improvement in the standard of work for UK drivers, but I know many observers won't pat us on the back for taking this step, which comes after a 5-year legal battle. They have a point, though I hope that the path we chose shows our willingness to change." The Uber case could set a precedent for improving the conditions for thousands of people working in the so-called gig economy, where flexible work comes at the price of no employment protections or social benefits. Uber's share price took a hit in overnight trading. The company insists its UK fare prices will not go up. But when a similar ruling happened in California, that's exactly what did happen. McGregor-Wood, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Yaseen Aslam joins us now from London. He's the president of the App Drivers and Couriers Union and was the lead claimant in the case against Uber. Welcome to the program, Yaseen. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, this has been a very long fight for you. You first took Uber to an employment tribunal in the UK back in 2016, and now the company says it's going to give its 70,000 Uber drivers basically the same working conditions as normal employees. What's your reaction to what Uber has announced?
I mean, that's correct. I was one of the claimants that actually filed in the tribunal in 2015, and the tribunal actually ruled in our favour in 2016. But it's some success for what Uber announced. But at the same time, it's not exactly a victory for us, because the Supreme Court ruled that we're workers from the minute we log on to the minute we log off. So what Uber is offering us is not really exactly them obeying the law. And at the same time, I was just listening to the clip from Jamie Haywood and also Uber's CEO, Dara. It's not like a gift. They fought us for 6 years, and we had to go through a lengthy battle to win these rights, and they've been denying us these rights, and the Supreme Court clarified them. But having said that, they still aren't obeying the laws. It's just something, but not exactly what the law entitles us to.
Yes, I'd like to ask you more about that, because Uber says it'll pay its drivers the minimum wage of about $12 only when they accept a trip. So only when a customer confirms they're travelling in an Uber, rather than when a driver first turns on the app and is technically ready for work. Do you expect that perhaps you or someone else might challenge this and which might prompt Uber to be more in line with what the Supreme Court has ruled?
One of the problems we have is this wasn't our fight. You know, once we won in the tribunal in 2016, and the law was sort of more or less, the tribunal clarified what our rights were, we shouldn't have had to drag it on further. The problem we have is there's lack of enforcement by the government. And what you got to understand is Uber operates in a regulatory industry such as Transport for London, who license Uber, and they also license drivers like myself. But there's a failure of them to regulate. So what's happening now is even though we managed to get the win at the Supreme Court, which is a massive victory for us guys, and the court actually clarified the whole issue. But what's happening here is Uber is clearly not obeying the law. And the problem we now have is falling back onto workers like myself to having to push Uber to make sure that they obey and do what the law entitles us to do.
Another interesting thing is that Uber, in terms of what Uber has just announced, apparently it won't apply to Uber Eats drivers. The company says that the reasoning behind that is because they operate under a different economic model. Do you think that's fair, or should Uber Eats drivers be entitled to the same conditions that Uber drivers will now be enjoying?
I mean, the case that we filed was because I was a former Uber driver, and it is around the Uber drivers and the working conditions around Uber in terms of driving. Now, if you look at the Supreme Court judgment, it opens the door for all these gig workers, whether they're Deliveroo riders or whether they're Uber Eats riders. And the problem we have is it's about ending this exploitation. So if you look at these models like Uber, they heavily rely on BME communities and vulnerable workers that they could exploit. And that means by pushing them into a system where the drivers are then working, or whether it's the worker working longer and longer hours, and the fares get cheaper and cheaper to attract more customers. And there needs to be a balance behind that. And this is where, like in the UK, we have these employment laws. We have a middle status that doesn't affects your flexibility or your freedom, but you're entitled to some basic rights. Now, at the same time, if you look at what Uber's offering, they're only offering this for drivers that are over the age of 25. So the law actually applies. So what about if you have drivers that are like 21 years old, for example? So there's a lot of flaws in this. And at the same time, when we look at like, this is the minimum wage, which is $12.50 or whatever it is in US in dollars. It's after expenses. So how do we work out our expenses? You know, like, and I don't trust Uber, and I'm sure many other drivers don't. So technically, this ruling or what Uber is offering is only for the time when we have passengers on board, and there will be a lot of time when we're not when we're waiting around, but we're actually working for Uber on a job with our app on, sitting on our car, in our cars, waiting for Uber, but not getting the job.
Okay, Yaseen Aslam, looks like we've just lost you, but thank you so much for joining us. It looks like the fight with Uber could continue into the future. Thanks again for joining us.